move on and talk about you and how it all began, I suppose, for Sir Nick Faldo. What did your parents say when you first told them you wanted to be a professional golfer?
Well, I called myself, I was a sportsman looking for a sport, because I loved all my school sports, and I was good at all of those. And then golf popped up on television, the Masters, 1971. I watched, and I didn't get a TV till I was 8. Then I got a colour TV till I was 12, and then all of a sudden the Masters pops up, and I know it's 13 3/4, as I always call it. And so I literally came down the next day and said, "Hey, I want to try golf." We knew nothing about it, and my mum took me off to good old Welling Garden City Golf Club. And I booked my 6 lessons, and I said, "Right, I'm ready now." And he said, "No, your first one's tomorrow." And I went, so I was. Anyway, that was my start, and I was bitten by the bug by 15. I made the decision I want to be a pro golfer. I left school at 16 because, in Britain we don't have college system like that, like America. So it was like that's the decision. Like many British or European sportsmen, left school early and totally dedicated. And I went to the practice ground and beat golf balls for years. Came out the other end at 18 as one of the top players in the country. I won the English Amateur, British Youth, Berkshire Trophy, a couple, the big ones. I missed out on the Walker Cup, and that was kind of a key. I tried American University in 76. I nearly had it on 20 years. 76, didn't like it because I felt like, going back to college or school class rather in the morning. That was my practice session.
Yeah.
I only survived 3 months of that. I came back and I won another amateur event. It was kind of a weird feeling, and then decided, maybe it's time to turn pro. So I actually turned pro before I was 19. Just before I was 19, headed off to the French Open, my very first one. And first goal was to make the top 60 then. That was the exempt European tour. It wasn't even the European Tour then, it was the British Tour. And I finished 58th, and that was 76, was it? Yeah, and then 77 was a Ryder Cup year. And, that was my next goal, to make the Ryder Cup team. And I then finished 8th in the Order of Merit and made that Lytham Ryder Cup team. And that was obviously a massive turning point, playing with Usti. We only played 3 matches in that era. There was only 3 rounds, and I won all 3, beating Nicklaus day 2 against Ray Floyd with Peter Oosthuis, and then the last day I played some guy who was the Open champion, Tom Watson, and beat him 1 up, and that, I guess, was the start.
That was, and led on to your history as the most successful Ryder Cup player we currently have. But there's a few things you've touched on there that I want to pick up. You mentioned the Walker Cup. I've just come from the Walker Cup. We've just had it in Aberdeen this weekend. And it's very interesting to see how it is so different for the Europeans and the Americans in terms of nurturing their game. I mean, a lot of the Europeans do choose to go to the American college system. Otherwise, a lot of the European guys do just turn pro much younger. And how do you view the difference there, I suppose, across the Atlantic?
Oh, well, it was a lot to do with parents. I mean, it's very much, and if, you need a backup of having an education as well, a piece of paper to wave as well. I mean, the American system has been proven. It works. All the great players that come through it. I mean, Europe is obviously very different. But again, it's a different world now. If you have serious talent, you have a name, you've won the right event as an amateur, you can turn professional and you can be a millionaire, or you can have guarantees to be a millionaire actually, literally almost overnight. Yeah. And that's totally different. I mean, I started, my first contracts were £2,000. I mean, now these kids are getting $250,000 and more, or even more, I can imagine. But millions in some of the cases, like Michelle Wee or something like that, dangle millions in front of them. So it's totally different. So if parents are worried about security of money to become a successful sportsman quickly as possible, then that's almost that tick that box. But I would almost lean. I'd almost lean, if you've got the talent, get out there and go and play.
Really? Okay.
I really would, because we're talking about other sports. We're saying, if you're that talented, if it all goes wrong, you can always go back to school.
Yeah.
You could go back to school in your 30s if you really had to.
Yeah.
But you can't pick up your game again in your 30s if you haven't found a game. So, but that's really not my responsibility. That's a relationship between parents and their kids.
Of course. Well, anyway, Great Britain and Ireland won the Walker
Yeah.
Cup this weekend. So, maybe that is the right way to go. So back to you and your career. And you all started off, as you said, then you met David Ledbetter and you went through some quite severe swing changes. How hard a decision was it to go through that process?
Well, the decision was kind of it's always the easy bit. I wanted to do something about my golf game. I had a the 70s willowy golf swing, a lot of hand action, a lot of leg action, a lot of feel. I was a field player. I had great rhythm, tempo. That was kind of the glue that stuck it all together. But I discovered when I really needed. I led the Open in '83 for another 10 years. In '83 at Birkdale, going into the back nine, couldn't handle it. I became European #1 that year. Even won in America the next year. But then something hit me at the end of '84. I thought, I haven't really got what I really want. I couldn't shape the ball how I wanted to. Didn't have the trajectory I felt I needed. So, I actually met Dave Ledbetter down in South Africa, and we talked about it. And then I thought about it. And then by the time next May came, I was in America, couldn't hit my hat. And so I said, right, let's do it. And which, in hindsight, was stupid to do anything like that mid-season. Absolutely, I was European #1. I got bombarded. I lost my game. I'm trying to change my golf swing physically. And understanding it all now. It ended up being 2 years. That took 2 years of, I call it the real dark days. I was working my butt off. I hit thousands of balls a day.
I was going to say, what was the daily practice routine?
I hit the big buckets, not the little ones you take. The big bucket, it's got 300 balls in it. I was hitting 5 of those a day. I was hitting 1,500 balls a day.
My goodness.
I couldn't close my hands by the end of the day. And, I try to, which again, in theory, it's dangerous. I mean, I could have injured something here, that torn something up. We didn't have physiotherapists like that. We didn't have the mind coach. I mean, now I would say, right, if you want to rebuild your swing, well, if you want to make changes, you've got to make physical changes. You go off and somebody would start to change you physically, strengthen you. Then at the same time, you'd have a mental coach kind of dealing with the past, creating new pictures for the future, all that sort of thing. And again, then I would disappear at the end of the season. I'd struggle through a season, and you'd disappear. I believe in a couple of months, 2, 3, whatever, 4 months, you could disappear somewhere and take your team. And you could rebuild your golf game that way, and you do it purely by that, and you come back out as a different golfer. That's I would, if I was advising a young kid to go through a swing change now, I would definitely say do it that way. Trying to be a competitive golfer, changing your golf swing, especially when was in #1 in Europe with the media attention. It was brutal. I lost contracts. I lost nearly everything. Only just about Pringle. Pringle stuck by me.
But so just let me quickly ask you while we're on this. The obvious example for who's been dealing with this recently is obviously Padraig Harrington. Following his 3 major wins, he goes and tries and does the same. Right. And he's struggled a bit, really. How have you kind of rated how he's tried to deal with that? Well,
he tinkered with things, which you're always doing. But he has his own way of doing things, and he is a workaholic. The classic story, I was with Padraig on when we were on a private plane flying back, and he said, I know that I work so hard during the tournaments that even though I'm in contention on the weekend, I'm worn out, and I'm not going to win because I've just worn myself out. And I said, whatever you do, don't tell anybody that. And his eyes went this big because he just told the newspapers the same story. And I thought, you rocket, as I call them, rocket scientists. That was this kind of thing you keep to yourself. But that just shows you there's what you've got to learn to pace yourself, where to do your work, and you've got to be smart about practice time and tournament time and which one is priority. And he's gone at it so hard he's injured himself as well. He's got tendonitis. I know he tried to get. I know a couple of years ago, he tried to get 190 mile an hour club head speed, belting balls, and sure enough, something goes, and that we have to withdraw all sorts of. So you've got to be careful how you how you do things.
You do, and that's an interesting point. As Senek's referred to, Rory McIlroy was here yesterday doing a clinic with you. There were some interesting things that came up there, about the practice time you put in compared to the tournament time, and actually the difference between the two, particularly at majors, because you just don't want to wear yourself out before it all begins.
Well, yeah, you've got to get acclimatized, and it's really good to do it. There's so much going on in the majors. Even just the fact that there's tens of thousands of people there for practice rounds, they want a bit of time from you as well. So it's smart of these guys to get in a week or two before to get yourself acclimatized, especially most of the major sites. For a young kid, it will be the first time going there. So you got, or even just the rota of the Opens, it's 10 years since the last one. So it's really smart to go in and get acclimatized, get your work done, understand the golf course, then your brain starts thinking what you really need to do. So and then your practice rounds. Yeah, I learned that later in life as you get older. Wow, a practice round taking 5.5 hours is way too long a time on your feet on a Tuesday and Wednesday. So I started cutting back, just playing 9 holes. But I was already, again, I'd learnt that after being out there 25 years.
Yeah.
Wasn't a quick learner. These guys now at 22 have got into this, so you can see why they're gaining experience from what we all went through.
Exactly. So, well, it didn't stop you winning 6 majors, as I've mentioned. Tell me now, what would you say, what in your eyes is your best win or your proudest moment on the golf course?
No, I'm fortunate. They're all very different, and they're all coming at very special times. The first is always special. There's 2 firsts. The Open and the Masters. It's that barrier getting through that. The very first one, of course, was the first time I'd ever felt anything like that. That 18 holes or the back 9 at Muirfield, just churning out pars. I was nervous. The golf course was brutal. We were playing in a true Scottish pea soup. Golf ball was going nowhere. So that whole emotion of feeling, and I experienced that emotion of, the sensation rather. That 18th hole, that 5 unhit, everything went in slow motion. Really weird. I went through it. It was like saw the ball go. Yeah, it was quite weird. So no, they're all special.
Can't pick one out.
You can't really see, it's win at St Andrews in the sunshine. Obviously, at the home of golf, that was really cool to win 2 majors that year. And then the last one against Greg was really special because I didn't have the same self-belief as I had in 90 or 92. That was my best mental round probably of my life because I had to push myself through the procedure of hitting a golf shot, of visualizing and then talking to yourself and how you're going to do it. And when you're playing great, it all happens like that. But when you're not, when there's these little doubters are sitting on your shoulders, you have to, what does Coldplay say? Send the bad ones away, leave the good ones and send the bad ones away. And you had to do that. You had to take yourself through, the process, as they call it.
Yeah, now that's one I want to talk about. Your, most recent one, the last one, the 96 Masters, your battle with Greg. And in many ways that was known a lot for his demise that final day. But we've got some guys watching on golfwrx.com and they've tweeted in a few questions, one of which is from a guy who calls himself Pure Swings One. He says,
Pure Swings One, please.
Can you confirm what you whispered into Greg Norman's
ear? Yeah, it's written in my autobiography, so it's not exactly a secret anymore. No, I genuinely felt for the guy. I mean, if it happened, if I was 6 shots up and lost a major, I would be scarred. I won majors and I lost majors, but fortunately I haven't got any scars from them. And I said to him, I don't know what to say. I want to give you a hug, mate. And I hugged him, and I knew where he was heading to the media tent. And I said, don't let the bastards get you down, because I knew what he was going to be going through. And he handled it better than probably anybody else could have handled a situation like that. So, as I said, that was a genuine competitive day. I mean, I'm looking after my camp. He was in his camp. I shot 67. I finished a week 12 under. I mean, that's the bottom line in golf.
Yeah.
We know where the start of the race is. It's the first tee, and the finishing line is the 72nd green, and that's what it's all about.
But still, you two, you and Norman have forged a lifelong friendship, and you're very close still today, isn't it? It must have been nice to have had a battle. The few battles amongst you, though.
Well, we had a good. I mean, Sevi as well. Unfortunately, we lost Sevi in the summer. We had great battles with Sevi. We had our little group at that time, well, we had Seve,
Langer,
obviously Norman,
yeah.
we had Woodsy, we had Langer, we had a Lazabelle, and in America we had Pricey, well, not South, Rhodesian, but playing American tour was Pricey, Greg was in America, and Fred Couples. So that was kind of our little world. So I used to always watch what they were doing in America, and I'd make sure if Freddie or Nicky had finished whatever, second or third, I made sure I finished second or third in Europe, because once we got into that world number one thing, once you kind of, everybody talks about, do you want to be world number one? And I think about that now. I think that's a rotten question to ask anybody, because I never thought about it until suddenly, when you can see the finishing line. There's no point thinking it's a really unfair question asking a kid, do you want to be one that no one? Because if he says, well, I don't know, you think, he hasn't got it. But it's not fair. So when finally the world rankings came along and there was a chance, wow, I could be number one. Well, I thought, I'd love to be that. And then I had to push myself against Greg and Couples and Price and those at that era, and Seve, to become world number one.